Hey guys, what is up? Swim here, and today I'm going to show you guys the team composition that I used to reach Big Boss 3, and that hopefully later today I'll be going on to Big Boss 4 with. So the team composition in this case is my Warriors build. So this build, and there are two variant builds, so it's going to be a little bit complicated here, but my main variant in this case uses these 8 heroes. Those are Doom, Kunkka, Pudge, Slardar, Tiny, Troll Warlord, and then it's going to go on to run Witch Doctor to give Troll Warlord the Troll attack speed, and it's going to run a Necrophos to complete Heartless with Pudge and Warlock with Witch Doctor. That is typically my main build that I prefer to go when I'm in Warriors, but sometimes if I have a lot of Tusks, it's looking like I'm going to get a Tusk level 3, or perhaps if I pick up the Savage perk, Tooth and Claw, I'll go into the Beast variant instead, or Savage variant, which in this case will use Tusk and Lycan instead of Tiny and probably Slardar in that slot. Although Slardar is still flexible if you need scaled. So the Tiny Slardar version is better if your Tiny is looking like he's going to level 3, or you're going to need the scale tag to either pair against mages with something you get later, like a Medusa, Tidehunter, or Slark. Even Slark is totally fine to do that with. Or if you end up with the Retaliate item. Retaliate is an extremely powerful item, and you can use it with Slardar as a kind of like solo main tank, ideally paired with something like a Vanguard or a Chainmail to kind of top you off. So that is basically the build. When I go to level 9, I will put in either a second level 2 Doom, a second level 2 Troll Warlord, sometimes an Enigma. Enigma is a good choice if you're against something like Knights, because his pure damage will go through the Knight Shield, something that favors like a slow, grindy fight. Sometimes for that 9th slot, you could run something like a second level 2 Kunkka, but I typically don't end up building more Kunkkas than the first 3, completing the first level 2 Kunkka. So that is basically it. I'm going to talk about items a little bit, and we can see exactly what items are going to do well here. But for the most part, you don't really need to be often hitting level 10 with this build. If you hit level 10, you can run just kind of one of those same additional flex slots. I think a lot of new players kind of over-prioritize hitting level 9 and 10, when in reality, just upgrading your heroes is often going to do a lot more for you. So we can talk about items for this comp as well. As always, you want to pick Chainmail very early. I'll kind of show you a little bit why when I get into how this build often wants to position. But Chainmail at this time with 10 armor is just completely broken. It's the best tier 1 item after Embarrassment of Riches. So it's not really fair. Mask of Madness is going to do pretty well for this build. It's not actually an amazing Mask of Madness build despite having Troll Warlord. One of the most important things to understand about Troll Warlord is that you don't actually want to give him attack speed as much as you want to give him attack damage. A lot of players look at Fervor and feel like you want to give him attack speed, you know, you'll buy a Moonshard on him. In reality, attack damage is going to do a lot more for him. You really want to give him something like a Daedalus or a Skull Basher is going to do very well. So Mask of Madness will work for this build. I often scoop it up. However, it's not as good as it is on something like Assassins or something like Hunters. Fall from Grace is, as always, very, very good, and if you take Fall from Grace, you need to be playing the Beast version with Lycan, because Lycan and Kunkka, as 2 humans, will complete Heartless level 2, and that's very, very powerful. This is a great build to go if you get Fall from Grace early on. I mean, if you happen to get this in the first 3 packs, this is one of like the 2 builds in the game that I'm ready to just like snap off and go for it. Unstoppable, as always, is really good. If you're in the 6 warrior comp, this is going to do a lot of work for you. I will say something like Silver Lining won't do as much. The idea is you don't often want to lose streak with warriors. Part of Warrior's strength is they have the ability to fight for the early rounds and win streak, because the 3 warrior tier is actually very powerful. Usually with something like Assassins, as you remembered in my old Assassin video that you might have seen, The 3 tier is terrible and the 6 tier is super good. This one's quite the opposite. The 3 tier is very good and the 6 tier is pretty good, but it's not like super necessary. You do want to get to this 6 warriors online as soon as possible, and hopefully a win streak will help you get there. Sometimes I do end up taking Tooth and Claw. Even with just Tusk and Lycan, it's actually a pretty good item. But as always, Smuggler and Fall from Grace are basically just auto picks in tier 2. This item is extremely good in any build. And we can get to the tier 3 items. As mentioned before, Retaliate's very, very good, but as is Vanguard and Skull Basher. Vanguard and Skull Basher typically being the strongest tier 3 items straight up. Skull Basher is a hard upgrade to Sacred Relic. It's better in basically every single way. Little known fact, it deals 100 damage when it actually applies this stun, when it procs that, which is really good. And then, of course, something like Radiance or Daedalus is always going to do very well for you here. This is a build that wants to go Daedalus over Moonshard, typically, unlike Assassins who preferred Moonshard. So in terms of formation, you're going to want something a little bit like this. We want our Troll to have the damage item here. The Brooch of the Aggressor to give a bit of mana gain can go on Kunkka, so that Kunkka can charge up his boat faster. And then we can have our kind of secondary tank item go on Doom, in this case just because Doom likes the idea of surviving long into a fight. He's kind of our secondary DPS, so we can watch this fight play out here, but this is sort of the positioning I'd recommend. You want a main tank up in front, usually Pudge with a Vanguard or Chainmail. Now if you don't have a Vanguard or Chainmail, you probably shouldn't have a hero up in front like this, but that's why these items are so good. So you have your main tank that's just going to tank everything. This can be a 3-star as well. Let's go ahead and see how this positioning plays out in a fight. So as we can see, our Pudge is tanking everything. It will take a ton of fire. Now Vanguard is an extremely powerful item. It blocks, like on average, something like 30 to 35 damage per attack, which is really, really good. But more importantly, it also denies the opponent mana gain during that time. So you might have also seen in that positioning, and we can go back to it here, the Necrophos was basically right behind the Pudge. This is pretty important because Necrophos is a hero that wants to be as close to combat as possible due to the range, the limited range of his skill, but he's a ranged unit, so he won't step up on his own. So he wants to be right behind the tank so that he can get good AoE range as close to the center of the board as possible with his Death Pulse. And the Troll typically behind that where he's a little bit safer. Now, if there are assassins in the game, what you want to do is have one or two of your tanky warriors, like Slardar or Tiny, even one step back from where they are in this formation, so that the assassins will jump on them instead of something valuable like a Troll Warlord or a Doom. And that's basically it. As I mentioned, if you get a 9th hero, slap in a 2nd level 2 Doom, a 2nd level 2 Troll, a 2nd level 2 whatever, or just something that's just high value like a level 2 Enigma. I wouldn't typically overextend for a lot of the like 2-star 5 costs. Stuff like Techies will do okay for you, especially if you have Fall from Grace, because Techies bomb is physical damage in this game. But it can work for you in a pinch in that scenario. And that is basically it. That is the build. And like I said, this is one of the strongest builds in the game. I would put this in top 5 compositions right now, which I would rank as the Assassin's comp, which I showed. Well, these aren't rankings, but my top 5 comps in no particular order are the Assassin's comp I showed you guys last week, plus this warrior guide I showed you right now. 6 hunters plus 3 warriors does extremely well. Mages, as always, like 6 mages is, obviously in the top. And then, of course, knights, some variant of knights trolls, which I'm not sure. I'd have to tinker around a little bit more with this. Anyway, next up, you guys are going to see my hunter comp guide. And that one's going to also be very powerful. So I'll see you guys in the next one.